Record on this. Okay, Hanan, you ready? You with me?
Yes. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, and hello, everybody. We are coming to you live today from the Kingston Law Group Facebook page to bring you a very interesting, and we promise it will be rather short, even though Hanan and I can talk for quite some time together, on an issue related to hiring 1099s and regular employees and discriminatory practices in the workplace. Hanan, why don't I give you a minute to introduce yourself to the crowd first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Hanan Isaacs. I'm an attorney in New Jersey and New York. And my practice mostly these days involves employment law, much more for employees than management. Occasionally I represent management. So I do litigation, arbitration, mediation work in employment law, federal, state, local government, nonprofit, for-profit, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, so if you have a problem with the way that you're being treated at work, regardless of what it is, give Hanan a call. He gives you great advice, as he's going to give to us today. So the point of doing this video was because something came up in my own business, and I said to myself, well, who else would I ever want to go to than Hanan to get some not advice necessarily, but like, what do we do in these kinds of situations? So I have all 1099 employees. Some report to others in a hierarchy, and everyone gets along great and does a phenomenal job for my business. Something recently came up though, and that is we have one particular staff member who is uncomfortable both for religious reasons and her political beliefs in writing for certain clients. So for instance, and I'm going to turn this, to protect everyone's identities, maybe it is a devout Muslim who is not willing to write about or even serve alcohol. And we've certainly seen those situations play out long ago in the news. So the question is, if a 1099 employee refuses to do work on an LGBTQ issue, on a vaccine issue, and claims religious reasons, what's the law say?
So, Jennifer, this is a really interesting question from my perspective. I do not differentiate between 1099 employees and so-called regular, W-2 employees.
Sure.
From the point of view, if you are supervising somebody and an issue like this comes up and they have a task and they refuse for religious reasons to engage in that task, the question is, what are their rights to resist and what's the employer's right to enforce or compel? And I think that the best way to describe that is that there's a few things going on here. One would be Title VII of the United States Code, which is the New Jersey counterpart, is the law against discrimination. And they both say essentially that employees have the right to a discrimination-free environment as much as possible, which means race, creed, color, national origin, gender, age, disability, and a host of other descriptions, protected areas. So this would be, let's say, religion. So the employee says, I will not do this. And the employer says, but I need you to do it. All right, so then there's something called in the law a reasonable accommodation. Okay. So the employee could say, I won't do it, but my colleague over here will be happy to do it. They love to drink. They drink all the time. They love to write about drinking. Maybe that works. Maybe it's that simple, no big deal. Sometimes that can happen. Other times the employer says, no, I assigned it to you. And if you don't do it, you have just defied my expectation and you can't work here. So the other side of the coin is, while the employee and the employer have to look for a reasonable accommodation, it's not unlimited. So, and if it causes that, quote, undue hardship, end quote, on the employer, on the manager, they have the right to say, we're disciplining you up to and including termination if that's what they feel like they want to do. So it's an interesting area because it's not a First Amendment area per se. That's why I talked about the statutes. First Amendment to the US Constitution and the counterpart in the New Jersey Constitution basically say government shall not compel religious exercise, nor shall it interfere with religious expression. That's not this unless the 1099 person is working for the government, state, federal, or local. Now you have those pieces going on in addition to Title VII, which also applies to the government employee, and reasonable accommodation is going to come up again. So that's the essence of it. It's a balance. We try to have a balance. And at some point, I hope we should get to, what is the US Supreme Court saying about religious expression of an independent contractor who doesn't want to serve somebody who's gay or a person of color, all of that. Those issues are front and center right now in the court.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that this kind of touches upon, right? So if someone refuses to do 1099 work because it is for a protected class, LGBTQ, maybe they don't like old people, whatever their reason is,
Yes.
Can they turn that down?
Right. Well, this is the thing is, first of all, somebody who has that strength of conviction, of opinion, has to have a thick enough skin to deal with that, because it's going to come up. It's not just one religion. What if it's the person who's a Catholic who refuses to write about other religions? Just
Right.
like my God says this is what I should do. Well, at some point, you may have to be in business for yourself, I have to say, and it's fascinating because the US Supreme Court has been really open to these questions that I thought were settled a long time ago. I mean, if the people in the 1950s who were total anti-Black bigots, all they had to do apparently was say, I'm not doing this because of my bigotry. I'm doing it because of my religion. Today, we actually have a case pending in the Supreme Court of the United States where a web designer says, don't ask me to create a web design for you if you are a same-sex couple or whatever the issue happens to be there. This already happened with the cake maker out in Colorado.
I was just going to say that, right.
So I have an article called A Piece of Cake or Religious Expression. Masterpiece Cake Shop in the First Amendment. That was back in 2019. Here we are 4 years later, and it's the web designer, same thing. I have a real problem with that because essentially those people, those individuals, and I can tell you in New Jersey under the law against discrimination, you cannot, as an independent contractor, I can't, as a lawyer who's an independent contractor for these people, I can't say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to represent you because you're Black or you're Hispanic or you're gay or you're old or whatever the thing is that I feel. Right? I don't think that's right. If that's the law, if there's a statutory protection that prevents me from doing that, what about public accommodation in a hotel or a motel? Today, I guess you could say, I'm sorry, my religion prevents me from allowing you because we don't believe in serving people of color or people who are
Right.
or Hispanic. It's ridiculous, but the US Supreme Court is entertaining that as a serious argument. Makes me crazy. And I want to tell a story about that.
Okay, because I've got more questions. Go ahead.
US Supreme Court, highest law in the land. Every law student, every young lawyer has this yearning, whether they say it or they don't. I would love to be on that court, but I'm humbled because I don't know that I'm qualified. So, who had that thought back in 1859? Abraham Lincoln was a great lawyer, self-taught. He was like, he worked for really big companies, but he was like a timber lawyer, And he said, when the US Supreme Court decided the Dred Scott case, which basically said that Black people have zero rights under the United States Constitution because they can't really be citizens. You know what he said? I don't think they're so great anymore. This is how I'm saying my belief about this. You make a religious exception that allows people to demonstrate total bigotry every day, all the time, because of religious expression. BS. Barnyard epithet. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So let's take it a step further then. And the individual who's refusing work because of skin color of the client or LGBTQ status or whatever it is, now is expressing those opinions to other people in the workplace.
So there should be no reasonable accommodation for that.
Okay.
The fact is, free speech in the workplace only goes so far. The federal and state law protects employees and job applicants from discrimination about all of those areas. And it requires reasonable accommodation only for a religious expression, but not bigotry. You cannot go around saying horrible things to other workers about coworkers based on those, I'm going to call them,
or clients.
17
right.
Clients, 17 areas of protected, employment status in New Jersey, 17 of them. Right. So don't be going around making people uncomfortable. Don't say things that are going to put them in a bad spot. We talk about the old days, they would say, you'd get a crowd together in the bad days and you'd round up somebody and you would create a trial that took about 10 seconds and you would lynch them, you'd kill them, right? There is something in the workplace. There's a mentality of, if you can just get a critical number of people against somebody else on the basis of these divisive areas, you can do some serious harm. What starts out as an expression can turn into physical violence, right? So the employer is not only responsible to make sure that doesn't happen, they're required affirmatively to go out and say, this workplace is safe. It's safe physically, mentally, emotionally. And they're required to investigate and discipline people who cross that line. So this is not a matter of, as a matter of my religious expression, I have to spread the gospel of anti-LGBTQ or anti-Black or anti-women or whatever. They get told, they should be told, no, you cannot work here if that's how you're going to behave.
Right. And it's a behave issue. So, I think you can just say as a 1099, I'm not comfortable taking on that specific task and leave it at that. And then I think as the owner of a company, I've made sure that my team knows, okay, if views are being expressed that are insulting, let me know and I'll intervene. And that will not be tolerated here.
There's one other piece that's complicating that I want to throw in here, which is organizational rights. I don't care if you have 2 employees, they have the right to organize and decide if they want to be a union. But there could be 10, there could be 100, there could be 1,000. Employers have to be careful about squelching expression that employees have. I don't know about a 1099 employee being in a union. I haven't actually come across that. But let's say it's not that. Let's say it's just a regular group of employees. So the employer is not allowed to do certain things. You can't say, no talking about your pay, no talking about organization, no inhibiting people from talking in the job, outside the job, unless it's interfering with the job in some way. So I want to throw that in there because that's yet another area, it's another whole statutory world that employers have to be concerned about. So there was a time not long ago where if an employee said to another employee outside of work, Gardella is a real fill in the blank. And Jennifer found out about it and said, I'm not happy about that. That's terrible. You have done a lot of things to hurt me there, and I'm going to dismiss you. That case went to the National Labor Relations Board, and that employee was reinstated. right? Even if you're saying a bad thing. Why? Because if you're talking about the workplace and the terms and conditions of employment, and you're thinking about creating a union or furthering a union, the employee can't come down on that individual, those individuals, like a ton of bricks. Isn't
Okay,
that fascinating?
that
So
is fascinating.
the boss is an a-hole equals protected, what do you call it? Collective,
Protection.
protected collective bargaining type speech, even if there's no union, because there might be one someday. So I just
Right.
throw that in there.
Well, I got to tell you, you are the man to come to, not only with questions, but also with, I always have to say, as much as I've watched your videos and read your blogs and your social media, you definitely propose reasonableness as an answer. Everybody be reasonable in the workplace. Everybody be fair and kind, and everyone play well in the sandbox, right? It's just better.
That's what the law aspires to do. You know, people don't understand that. In Dickens, in Bleak House, which is all about law, and Dickens would know because he was a court reporter before he was a writer. The case was a 20-year-old case, Jarndyce versus Jarndyce. It had gone on so long, people didn't even remember what it was about. But one of the characters in that novel said this: if that's the law, then the law is a arse. So
Well,
pretty
there you
famous
go.
quote in the law. And I'm saying that's not what we want. We want the law to be what you said, which is an expression of reasonableness in the context of human interaction. And hopefully it is that way more than it's not.
Yeah, you actually said it in one of your recent videos. You said, you know, when people need an extra religious holiday off, okay, well, be reasonable. Don't penalize them. Don't, you know, I mean, if they all of a sudden become every religion, that may be an issue in the office, but
Right. They have become a Baha'i religion. They believe in a lot of different religions. I'm going to say in my office, when COVID was starting to yield a bit, and I wanted everybody to come back, my staff said, no, we're not coming back. I'm like, you're not? Uh-oh. So we had to figure it out. One of them said at that time, I'll come back, but nobody else can be there. I'm like, you need 2,000 square feet of space for you? We worked it out.
I'm laughing because I know your staff pretty well and you really well. So, so again, be reasonable.
Yes. And I like your haircut. I just want to point that out.
Thank you very much. Yeah, trying some new things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop the live stream. So everyone, goodbye to Hanan Isaacs. It's been our pleasure to see you here. Thank you so much for answering our questions. And if you have any other questions for Hanan, please feel free to either email him through his website, or you can put comments right here under the video when it becomes live to you out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
We're done live streaming. I'm going to end the recording.
Okay.
That was great.
That was fun.
It's a good question. It was an issue for me. I was like, do I fire people? Like, how do we do this?